Hey guys, Jim Vanosky with Manufacturing Talks. I say it all the time, every show. It's a great show, and I'm not wrong. I mean, we just are blessed to have some phenomenal guests. But I'm going to tell you, today's is a standout. I've got a guy named Nick Haase. He is the co-founder of a company called MaintainX, and they're focused on software solutions around maintaining manufacturing plants. But I will also share that Nick is bringing so much more that is just critical for your manufacturing operation overall. He just hits on some incredible points that touch on maintenance, but also go to everything you're doing out there. So I just cannot recommend enough. You tune in for this show, listen, watch the whole thing, because it's just going to be well worth your half hour. Trust me. Nick is going to be here in just a few minutes here on Manufacturing Talks. Stay tuned and we'll bring him to you.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vanosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vanosky, your host. Really glad today to be joined by Nick Haase. He is the co-founder of a company called MaintainX. We're going to dive into that here in a few minutes. But first of all, welcome, Nick. Glad to have you here.
Thanks so much, Jim. I'm excited to be here.
Good. And we're excited to have you. I think you have a phenomenal story to tell. Before we dive into the company, though, why don't you just tell us about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Started my career working in software and mostly consumer software. And I had an opportunity to get some insights into what I thought was a really outrageous, just mind-blowing challenge or situation happening in the manufacturing and industrial world around 2017, 2018, and realizing that there's a big digital divide there. And that got me really curious to understand why, and understand why was it that this core critical component of the world around us was still operating really the same, and largely a lot of the same ways as they were 20 years ago, very pen and paper heavy way. And so that got me on this journey that I'm on today, where I got really curious to understand, what was it that was creating that. And it's an area that I'm really passionate about. I have, a lot of family that worked in manufacturing and growing up in the blue collar trades. And I think they would be just as surprised to learn that how much of it hadn't changed, and why that hadn't kept up with sort of what we're seeing on the technology side for the white collar workforce and the so-called office space. And so I've become really passionate about manufacturing, and I find it to be one of the most exciting industries that is talked about probably much less than it should be. And one of my favorite shows growing up was How It's Made. So it's a big passion of mine.
Well, and there's so much to dive into here. People don't really ever think about all the programming and code and interfaces that kind of are behind the scenes in the manufacturing world if you're not directly involved in it. But if you are, you're exactly right. Everyone knows, there's so much there that is not keeping up with technology in general, and a lot of complications. So we're going to jump into that in a minute, but you founded MaintainX to go after that passion and to go after that problem. So tell us about that.
Yeah, my co-founders and I, we started this in 2018, and MaintainX is a mobile-first work execution and maintenance management system that's designed to help streamline maintenance operations and empower frontline workers. So we provide a really user-friendly platform for creating and managing everything from work orders and safety inspections, tracking inventory. And really the secret of that is identifying, hey, how can we bring these processes that are even today largely being done on paper into a digital interface? And so that was sort of the core premise of it. And then, that's led us down this really exciting journey to figure out how can we continue to not only, execute and deliver on that initial core mission, but build on top of that to help bring even more digital advancements in technology into this ecosystem that is, I think, in desperate need of it.
Yeah. So, when you talk about that, what pops into my head with my background in manufacturing is the computerized maintenance management system or software. And talk a little bit about what you're bringing to the table in that world that sets you apart, and then what the foundational elements of, what people in manufacturing are going to have to make the most of what you bring to the table.
Yeah. So it's, this commitment to digital transformation isn't new to manufacturing. I mean, they've been talking about this from the early 2000s onwards. And I think there's been a couple of key components that weren't heavily considered. And to some degree, the technology, the rate of evolution of some of the technologies that were needed to execute on that vision weren't quite at a readiness level that they needed to be. And so what I mean by that was, we have this juxtaposition technology where we have really sophisticated and advanced manufacturing production equipment, right? But the processes that support it are still really antiquated. And so there's this challenge of how do we get to that point? And companies are investing a lot of money, and really there's been this large disconnect between the systems that are creating all of these intelligent outputs, whether it's IoT sensors and things like that. How do those signals get into the hand of somebody who has to turn a wrench, proverbially speaking? How do they? And that disconnect right now is still creating a bottleneck across a lot of organizations. And sort of secondly, with that, the next component of that is that it's not enabling companies to make data-driven decisions. When you don't have the ability to capture that data that's happening on the front line, and you're not really able to establish that foundation, you kind of lend yourself to this situation where you're really only as good as your best plant manager. And so a lot of organizations have a very, unbalanced performance across the organization because they can't have, if they could all replicate their best plant manager across all of their sites, they would have done it. So it's really challenging to figure out how do you standardize and create predictable outputs and results and make data-driven decisions across the board. That's something that I think has been, we're hoping to help get that foundational element. And then the last piece of this is the cross-functional buy-in. Like, how do you get the same level of intent and interest and cooperation that you get from the C-suite as you get at that frontline, maintenance technician or that operator on the production line? How do you make sure that everybody can all be excited about, driving towards that same unified vision as it relates to digital transformation specifically? That's been a big challenge as well, because a lot of those tools are not designed for all of those parties to be easy to use and effective and beneficial.
Yeah, and that's well put. There's a couple things that came to mind as you were talking that I want to kind of peel the onion back a little further on. And one is that user friendliness piece. And to me, that's one of the biggest misses right now in the manufacturing world is we've got people out there, using apps on their phones and on their tablets day in, day out. And they come to our plants and they can't understand a darn thing we're trying to do with our software because it's so difficult to use, so non-intuitive. Have you guys taken that approach of trying to make yours more user-friendly and more like what people are used to dealing with in their day-to-day lives?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I consider myself a technologist. And when I look at the legacy solutions that a lot of folks are using today, my family comes to me for printer support or Wi-Fi support. So I'm pretty comfortable navigating, some somewhat semi-advanced technology challenges, as it relates to personal use. But when you get into these systems that they're using today on the production floor, they're straight out of 1995, design. The functionality is you've got long loading screens. You've got to make 400 clicks to find a part number in these systems. And they're really like almost anti-human. They're they're designed to be maximal pain. And so many folks have just kind of given up and thrown their hands up and said, it is as good as it gets. This is the way it's always been. And I think to some extent there's a little bit of if I had to do it, you got to learn it and do it too, Sonny kind of mindset too. But the reality is that the software has come so far. What you see, I think in 2015, there was this rapid shift for the first time where the smartphones, mobile devices came around in 2007, 2008. But we really didn't see the age group of, I think, 40, 45 plus really have a majority adoption of smartphones until that 2015, 2016 era. And so a lot of them were still using the flip phones or some of those older school phones, but smartphones are very much now have been almost in vogue for all ages and all generations for almost 10 years. Yeah. And one of the things that led that was companies like Facebook building really easy to use mobile software. And so and all these other applications that started to add value to folks so they could stay in touch with their family. They could,
Right.
So they had incentive to learn how to use these devices, and they became easier to use, more effective. Now, fast forward, one of the challenges was that, this manufacturing industrial technology didn't really keep up the pace with that. And there are a few reasons for that. I'll tell you, like mobile software a lot of folks take it for granted that Facebook just works. You can scroll that sucker forever. And as long as your internet's good, it's not going to lag or freeze. Same with Instagram, email app, whatever consumer apps you use, they just work. And so we kind of have this mindset that it can't be that hard, but the reality is it's really hard to build. It takes a certain skill set that hasn't historically been, those types of workers haven't been brought into these legacy software solutions, and they haven't, and there's not a lot of, there haven't been a lot of interest for those types of software engineers to go and work in those spaces because they aren't directly connected to that problem. So, most of them have tried to get a restaurant reservation before. So there's a million restaurant apps, right? Because those software folks have had those problems directly. There hasn't been a lot of overlap between folks who have worked in manufacturing and folks who know how to build really good mobile software. So some of those disconnects, I think, are part of the problem, part of the challenge as to why it's taken so long to get good mobile software developed. But and so there was this reality that, we still talk to manufacturers and folks today. They're like, I don't think these guys are very software savvy. And we go to them and we say, hey, do they use Facebook on their phone? They're like, I can't get them off Facebook. And they're like, they're going to be fine with MaintainX. And so there's been this usability, scaling challenge. And that's one of the things that we found has been, it sounds like one of the simplest differentiations. It's like, yeah, but what else? What else is the secret sauce to it? To why MaintainX is growing so quickly? What else is the big, important thing? And it's hard to quantify user interface. If you're doing like an RFP and you're going on a checkbox of feature to feature, how do you score user, ease of use? Or is that it's so subjective? It's one of those almost intangible things that you have to feel, and you know it when you see it, but it's hard to score it. And so that's one of the things that we've really found is a big, a critical component to not only getting the product out and being successful with it in the market to land it and get people to initially get excited about trying it out, but to get adoption and to get usage so that you get real value and results downstream, because that's what all these historically software has provided promised results, but they have a really hard time delivering it because they don't get adoption from all the stakeholders, and that's user interface is a big piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, and you said something that I think a lot of people kind of miss out on. We've talked for so long about the generational divide and how younger people were the ones who expected this user-friendly software, and that's not true anymore. You kind of alluded to that now. Every generation is using things like Facebook, and everyone's expecting things just to work and to be easy to use. So that's important for people out there. The other thing I wanted to drill into is, for those of us in manufacturing, we realize that you guys are taking on the maintenance piece, which itself, that's a big swath of what we do, right? But it has to interface with systems for all the other parts of manufacturing. So you have maybe a different software solution for finance and a different one for operations, and you've got to integrate with all of those. How well are you guys at MaintainX taking that burden on?
Yeah, from day one, we recognized that our goal was not to try to be the everything app for a manufacturer.
Yep.
We didn't want to become an ERP and all of it, because once you do, it's really hard to do everything well. Yep. And so our goal, and so understanding that, we knew that it was critical for us to be able to interoperate with all of the existing software systems and technologies that are on the floor, whether that's an ERP system or whether that's an IoT PLC SCADA system, all of the above, the production MES. We wanted to make sure that MaintainX was the conduit through which all of that data could flow in and out to support the overarching objectives. And most importantly, we focus on maintenance as a core component of it, but it's really anything operations related for safety, work execution, SOPs. We believe the future of manufacturing is not 25 apps on a technician or frontline worker's phone. It's not that you have to go to this app for this problem and that app for that problem. It's everything needs to centralize in one single source of truth for them, so that they can focus on doing the work instead of figuring out what software to tap into. And so our goal is to try to make sure that everything can be tied into our product, and we could get the data upstream to support the stakeholders that need that data in the finance, for example, and elsewhere.
And then another piece that we're seeing a lot of now is factory OEMs, people who provide the machines that make our stuff in our plants, are now bringing a lot of new functionality to the table.
Yeah.
IIoT and sensors and all these things that can feed a lot of data that we've been looking for forever. But then, I think you said it earlier, the problem is, what do you do with all that? How do you capture it? How do you make it actionable? So tell us a little bit about what MaintainX is doing around that.
Yeah, the OEMs are really coming up with some pretty incredible, solutions on there, and I give them a lot of credit, because the amount of real-time monitoring on equipment performance that you can get today out of the best-in-class machines is really, I think, widely underutilized. That people are still trying to understand how to take advantage of some of these tools, but it's really going to be one of the key components. It's not the whole story, but it's the key component to unlocking things like predictive maintenance, being able to start taking advantage of machine learning and AI that's coming out. Going to be a core component of being competitive in the market going forward. So being able to understand how to not only access that data, but then action on it. And that's where I think a bottleneck we're seeing as well, which I alluded to at the beginning, is how does when that machine performance data comes out and it's suggesting that, there's something that's vibrating in an anomalous way, how do we make sure that a technician can receive that signal in a timely fashion so they can address it before the machine takes them down? And so really what, MaintainX is aiming to do is eliminate downtime, unplanned downtime for manufacturers by taking that machine data, combining that with the human work data, execution data, and being able to provide a really as well as a litany of other factors and variables in consideration to help make it so where your equipment doesn't ever take you down and your production can be predictable, reliable, efficient, and really take us to that next generation of manufacturing that I think we're nearly ready to execute on as an industry.
Yeah. And you said something really important there that I want to call out, and that is, you talk about eliminating unplanned downtime. There's so much discussion of software and data and all these bells and whistles, but none of them are worth anything if they're not delivering to the bottom line for the companies they serve, right?
Yeah, that's it. And it's a question of, as much as it's fun to build some bells and whistles and gadgets and neat innovations, we understand that everyone here is running a business. And if we aren't providing real value that impacts that bottom line, we won't be successful as a company. Our customers won't be successful with us. And that's something that we think about as, I think, a fundamental underpinning of every product decision we make, every direction we take, is we're going to say, how is this going to add value to the bottom line? And that bottom line, yes, there's the production efficiency, there's that lack of downtime. There's other variables like employee retention. How long does it take to recruit and hire someone new because somebody leaves, they're frustrated? So it's really a much broader picture than and there's a lot of intangible elements to that too. But we also want to make sure that we're specifically addressing cost centers that affect them directly, and that's an area where I think a lot of organizations have been able to kind of skimp on a little bit. They have, in some of these, we had a really strong bull market for over the last 10 years or so, and they didn't have to worry so much about the margin, that part of the margins being a focus of their business. But now, as things are getting a little bit tighter, it's really important to figure out where can we optimize areas of our business that we've kind of been able to bake into the costs before, and now we're looking for new areas to improve that. Operational efficiency is a big one. Asset lifecycle is a big one. That sort of thing.
You're hitting on so many excellent points. It's like every time you speak, you say something. It's like, yes. And the one you said there was talking about the effect on the workforce and people getting frustrated and walking away, and talk about something that's absolutely crucial for anyone developing anything in manufacturing today. You better be serving the workers, because we can't get enough of them. And that problem is going to be with us for decades. So
it is,
kudos for recognizing that.
Some people think that, oh, maybe the robots are going to come and save us. And I can tell you, like, I'm the best in class robotics is absolutely mind blowing. They're doing some incredible work. I'm really waiting for it.
Sure.
But the reality is it's going to take humans for a much longer period of time than I think even the most optimistic robotics folks can dream of. So we need to find a way to keep them engaged, keep them productive, and also transition this generation. As this workforce that we currently are relying on ages out, we can bring in that next generation and give them the tools to be successful and to take that mantle and not only keep it, stable, but hopefully make it even better.
Yep. Excellent. Yeah. And robots are part of the solution, but guess what? They also create additional burdens for folks like you, because now you've got higher level workers who are looking for good working software solutions, and they're going to be even more demanding, right?
Exactly. They expect, world-class software to support them. And they, I think, are going to be frustrated with a lot of the legacy offerings that,
oh God, yeah.
They're forced to work with. So they're demanding change.
Yep, for sure. Excellent. So we've talked about stuff in the past and where we stand today. Obviously, we're also in this kind of inflection point around some new things, and we hear about them all the time. And I think a lot of people struggle to wrap their minds around them, and that's AI and machine learning, things like that. So going to give us your current view of that and where you think that's headed, and then what MaintainX is going to do to navigate that part of the technical challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely a trend that is growing, and the latest buzzwords, all the folks are talking about it, and it's important. I can't tell you how many enterprise executives I've had talks with over the past several months that one of their top projects, KPIs, or deliverables for their leadership team right now is develop our AI strategy. What are we going to be doing? How are we going to approach that? And so it's topical, it's important. And I'll tell you, this isn't like augmented reality, virtual reality, where it was a little bit of a, fad and it's going to go away. AI is here to stay. This is not a smoke and mirrors technology. So the real question is, okay, great, it's real. And we're asking folks who probably don't have a really strong depth of understanding of what AI is. These are folks who are operators. They're really strong mechanical engineers or strong backgrounds in these. They understand equipment, but the data and software component of it is they just do a lot of head nodding, and the technical elements of it aren't really well understood. And so one of the things that I think, the number one thing that any leader today can be doing to work towards developing an AI strategy is actually to pause on going after the shiny object. It's not a magic genie in a bottle that you're going to be able to buy off the shelf and rub the lamp and it's going to give you magical insights. That's just not the way AI is going to work. The reality is it's going to be highly dependent on the quality of the data that you have in your organizations that at that moment in time. And so one of the biggest pieces of data that almost every company is missing today is frontline data. They don't understand what work is being done, the frequency at which it's being done, how well, which assets are breaking down at what frequency. A lot of those numbers are really imprecise at best, if they have them at all. And so it's really about how can you establish a data foundation that will enable you to be successful with AI over the next few years. And so that's my number one thing right now is build that data foundation so that you can be successful with AI. And every day that you hold off on starting that is another day of data that you're losing. So I often ask folks, how many days of data do you think your organization can afford to lose? Do you think you can afford to lose another month's worth of data, another 3 months, another 6 months? That's the fire they're playing with by not really focusing and zeroing in on that strategy. It's not sexy from the standpoint that you're not going and buying a fancy whiz-bang tool, but it's, think about how you're capturing that data, how you're structuring it, how you're storing it, how it's all going to be able to be related to one another. And are you using the same asset name in your ERP as you are in your asset management system? So something that seems that, very simple and mundane is a surprisingly unsolved challenge across a lot of organizations today. So that's sort of step one, is build that data foundation. Step two is now you're going to be able to start taking that data, now that you have it, and start working towards predictive maintenance. So that you're going to be able to start to understand and identify anomalies that are going to help you, avoid unplanned downtime events, safety events, things that are going to, it's going to be able to accurately predict when things are going to happen because you have good quality data. And so that's sort of the next stage of AI, I think, to some extent. One of the things that I know almost every manufacturer or executive and leader that I've talked to is afraid of is AI kind of running wild in an organization.
Yep.
And so I think sort of the evolution right now is it's going to be human in the loop AI, as I call it. Yep. So it's going to be things where AI is giving guidance, giving ideas, it's surfacing insights, but not necessarily doing things, completing workflows in a full loop. So, and that might be something where it shouldn't be fully creating. It should always be surfacing an idea to someone. So, hey, we think your strategy around XYZ is something you should evaluate, and continuing to surface that information to a knowledge leader who can still make a human call. The reality is that if you're using AI to make funny cat videos or pictures where they're wearing hats and dancing, the implications of that being a little bit wrong isn't that big a deal, right? But if you're using it to make critical manufacturing decisions or workflow decisions that have the potential to backfire and get people hurt or lose the company a lot of money, you probably want to be a little more thoughtful and strategic about keeping human in the loop on those processes until we can really trust it. And so those are some of the things that I encourage folks to trust, to lean into today is to resist the allure of the shiny object out there. There are companies right now that are already advertising that they do full AI and predictive things, and I'm worried how that's going to impact the integrity of that term if we don't kind of help bring some awareness to how that process and how the sausage is made, so to speak. Yeah.
Excellent points. One last question for you. As you look to the future, what do you think the big opportunities are for MaintainX and for you guys?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the challenges that's really imminent today, that's a human problem, is how do we transfer knowledge from this generation that is executing the workforce and bring it to the folks who are entering. As we have this labor gap and this labor challenge where we just don't have enough skilled workers in a workforce and replace these folks. How can we make sure that we capture that knowledge on the way out and then enable the folks who do come into the workforce, even if they're less skilled than we'd like them to be successful in their roles? And so I believe that's an area where AI can play a critical role in helping provide guidance and troubleshooting advice to, apprentice level mechanics who are maybe operating without the mentor that they're used to having or the full attention of a mentor. We may end up in a situation in larger manufacturing plants where it used to be one-on-one attention. And now that might be, one skilled worker that's overseeing 5 or 6, apprentices. How do we make sure that we can leverage tools like AI to support those folks in those roles so that they can still have the knowledge at their fingertips that they need to do the job safely and effectively and predictably. So those are some of the, that's one of the ways that I see AI supporting in the near future. I think there's a lot of improvements that we can leverage to provide deeper integration across the technology stacks that exist in manufacturing today. I don't think, I think it's naive to suggest that work is done. I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to help make sure that those systems can connect, talk, and learn from one another. I think they have an immense amount to learn from each other and hopefully help break down a lot of the silos that exist within these organizations today so that they can actually, I think there's a lot of advantages and benefits being that are sort of low-hanging fruit opportunities that once that data can kind of be connected and working together, that we can start to surface to help leadership make more informed decisions, and particularly in these larger organizations that have very disconnected systems and in often cases different ERPs and different sites because it's a merger and acquisition organization. So finding a way to help bridge those gaps, I think is going to be really important. Downstream, I think there's going to be opportunities for things like augmented reality to support visual work instructions overlaid on top of equipment so that you'll be able to see, in a hands-free manner or, visualizing how to work on equipment. And ultimately, a lot of things that we're going to see significant, reductions in safety incidents where people aren't going to get hurt because they're going to do things the right way. We're going to see significant improvements in production, efficiency and effectiveness because we're going to see that folks are able to do things predictably in the right way. You think about why does a Big Mac taste the same at every McDonald's that you travel around the world? They've mastered the art of standard operating procedures. Yep. A lot of manufacturing companies have a really hard time mastering standard operating procedures at a single site across 3 shifts.
Right.
And so being able to leverage technology to start to identify opportunities for training and continuous improvement, be able to figure out why does shift 1 perform these tasks at a significantly more effective and efficient rate than shift 2. Where, and now that we can actually measure that with data, how can we actually go and improve, help take those advantages from shift 1 to shift 2, and then make that more predictable across your operations or site to site. So I think there's a lot of continuous improvement and learning opportunities as well there.
Very well put. So many amazing points you make along the way, even though you're focused specifically on maintenance, things that are just critical to the total operation for any manufacturer out there. So once again, I applaud you, Nick. We're out of time. Nick, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been extremely illuminating.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for having me, Jim. I'm excited for the opportunity here.
Glad to have you here, and we'll be following how things go with MaintainX as we move forward. Perfect.
Looking forward to chatting again sometime soon. Thanks so much, Jim.
Yep. And of course, as always, thanks to you guys in the audience. You're why we're here. This I'm sitting back listening to Nick talk, and honestly, he brought so many just fundamental points that people need to be thinking about in their manufacturing operations. They go well beyond maintenance. I'm just going to recommend this episode to anyone who's in manufacturing, and even just in general business. People need to be thinking about all of these things. So phenomenal job from Nick. I can't promise that everything's going to be as illuminating as what he brought us today, but all our guests are illuminating. So we're here every Tuesday. Join us. We'll be back with more. And as always, like our stuff, share it, subscribe. We'll be here for you. Thanks again. So long.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Benoski. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.